that we won the team champion, which is the most important for us as Ion Racing Lincoln Co. And yeah, yesterday was a bit shamed for me.
Yeah.
Couldn't start the car, and yeah, it's not good race for myself. But yeah, I think my teammates they did a really good job, and they finished as what we wanted.
Yeah.
And today is last race, so yeah,
Okay.
look, the weather, last race of the season with this weather is it's really crazy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ma, like you said, it's the last race, crazy weather conditions. If we can get a few laps in, you're P3, you've got 2 Chinese Championship guys ahead of you. Can you win a race here in Macau? Is that possible?
Everything is possible in Macau. For sure, I got looks like I got a very good chance. But yeah, this is Macau.
Exactly. Well, best of luck. Thank you for chatting to us, Makin Hua there. Let's see if we can grab a few words with... we got Dusan there. Dusan was the only driver from Goat Racing Honda was on track yesterday at one point. Nestor's over there. Is Nestor in his car? Nestor did a fantastic job yesterday defending his P5 position ahead of Rob Hoff, who was on the charge. But I don't know where Nestor is. Is he in his car? Because Nestor's going to have one job today, and that's to let his teammate through if we don't have a safety car. Is Nestor in his car? Is he going to wind the window down for me, or do I just give it a knock? No, I don't think he wants to speak. No, fine. Oh, no, is he going to get out? Is he going to get out? I just want to... No. No, okay, fine. No, not going to happen, fine. No one wants to get wet, and to be fair, I don't blame him at all. Okay, we've got Norby Michelis. For sure, he's not going to want to grab a few words with me. Yesterday, he told me in pit lane he doesn't want to talk about the championship. He's only 5 points shy, or 5 points ahead of Ted, but he doesn't want to talk about the championship. He says he just wants to focus on his own race, and he also said in the press conference yesterday, here at Macau, you can do everything right, but you will still end up in trouble for no reason at all. And actually, from what we've seen, that's true. Esteban Guerreri, I want to speak to Esteban because obviously he was in the championship chase. He came in 14 points shy of the lead, and he didn't finish yesterday. It was a very difficult day for him, a very difficult day for the GOAT Honda team. His door's open, so let's see if we can grab a few words. Esteban, just a few words if you wish. Obviously a difficult day for you yesterday, a very difficult day for the GOAT Racing team. How are you feeling ahead of this race?
Yeah, it was tough yesterday, no doubt about it, but we just finished the day yesterday, let's say, doing whatever we planned to do.
Yeah.
Didn't went our way, but we are still proud of all the job we've done, and yeah, now it's we are out of the title fight, so it was all to play yesterday. Today it's obviously extreme conditions, so try to see the checkered flag. The guys worked very hard until 1-2 o'clock a.m. last night, but yeah, I mean, Macau, rain, anything can happen, so yeah, let's enjoy this last race and see how it goes.
Esteban, just a final word. Obviously, you guys came in as the new team. You're under the watchful eye of a new team manager, Pepe Oriola. What have you guys learned from the 2024 season that you can take into next year?
Well, actually, I mean, we always trust ourselves as a team, and we knew we were a small team with less resources than our competitors.
Yeah.
But you know, when you have commitment, when you have dedication, you have an order in the team. You have experience as well. You know what you need. You know what, with the resources you have, you know the priorities. So all these steps were beautifully done, and I'm really proud that we understood how to execute. And in the end, we won races. We did podiums in every weekend. We enjoy a great year. So the process has been magical, and hopefully we can extend this for the future. So it's all about the process and how much passion we put in our day-by-day work. And I'm sure every one of these guys have done it with passion, and they have enjoyed all the trips. So that's what we take to our home after this race.
Okay. Thanks for chatting to us. blimey, my back. That wasn't a comfortable position at all. But as Esteban was saying there, Goat Racing Honda team came in as the underdogs. I don't think people actually expected them to be such a threat this year. They got podiums, they got race wins. They took the fight to the final round, but it just wasn't meant to be. But looking forward to seeing what they can do next year in the 2025 season. Ted Bjork just 5 points off the lead here. Is he in the car? Because he was in a super good mood yesterday. P10 on the grid with the reverse grid here. With the safety car, with the conditions. It isn't going to be easy, but let's see how he's feeling. If I can get through. I don't think I can. No, plus they got a hairdryer going on there. I think they're trying to dry something in the car. I don't know what. They're doing something. What are you doing in there?
What am I doing?
Well, not you, but what's the hairdryer doing in there?
It's just cooling Ted down a little bit. It's still very hot inside the car.
Cool, you're hot. You're hot, Ted. Ted, just quickly, a few words. 5 points off the lead, extreme conditions today. You're P10 on the grid. How are you feeling?
Yeah, the weather is playing in my favor for sure, but this is really a tough challenge for everyone. It's a little bit too much water to make a safe race as it's now. But we start behind safety car and we'll just see how it goes. I love this.
Okay.
Yeah, I send all the regards, right? Come on, let's go.
Best of luck there, Ted. I'm literally balancing on one foot. That was interesting. Okay, we got Marco Butti there. He didn't go out. That was a strange one yesterday in that first race because I spoke to him in the pit lane and I thought he was going to restart the race. I think they did restart the race with him and then he went back in the pits. But is he in there as well? Let's see if we can grab a few words with Marco. Do you know what? We're probably... Marco, just a few words. Marco, just a few words. Obviously a very difficult weekend for the team, but you being a rookie this year, something to be proud of. How do you reflect on your 2024 campaign?
Yeah, not easy question here in the grid, but yes, we are really happy to the work of my team, Goat Racing, first year for all. So rookie team and rookie driver from my side. I think we have done a good job, but there is still a race to do, and it's super difficult with tricky conditions. So now let's see.
Okay. Best of luck there, Marco. Okay, well that concludes our pre-grids here for today. I really hope we can have a race without too many interruptions. Best of luck for all the guys for the final race of the 2024 campaign. It's over to commentary.
And so, with a championship on the line between Norbert Mikelish and Ted Bjork, the Macau Gear Race, which is the final Kumho FIA TCR World Tour event of Macau, is ready to go. We had the TCR Asia Championship decided yesterday. TCR China will be wrapped up as well. And the point about the conditions is that the rain has been heavy all day and it's still falling. So it's not just a case of hoping that the standing water goes. It's just being added to all the time. However, we can't influence it from up here. The drivers can't influence it from down there. It is down to the race officials. It'll be a safety car start inevitably, and a call will be made over the course of what should be 10 laps. Of course, the drivers will be giving feedback to the teams. The teams will be passing that on to race control. But equally, the safety car crew will be passing on information to the teams. Now, if you're Norbert Mikelish and you are ahead on points, you probably quite like no racing laps. If you're Ted Bjork and you're 5 points behind and you like these conditions, you probably want lots of racing laps. Who do you believe?
And how positive was Ted down inside the car? These conditions play into my hands. I'm happy about it. He's been positive throughout, hasn't he? Every day we've heard from Ted, and with good reason. Had a great race yesterday. We've got a start delay board being presented on the timing screen now. So as the personnel making their way off the grid, we have a start delay board.
And that, I think, is just because of the nature of the amount of rain. It's a quirky one because it doesn't look quite as dark as it did earlier on. It's brighter, the cloud is rising a little maybe, but out of our window we can see the rain falling. There's a puddle that continues to fill, and so the start has been delayed. It's a 6-kilometre long lap, the Macau Gear Circuit, and so the weather conditions where we are may not be as bad as elsewhere. They may be a lot worse than elsewhere. It's hard to gauge. So our immediate impression of the track surface and the amount of rain is what we can see at the start line, but it could be completely different elsewhere around the lap, as it was yesterday for the FR race. And we're going to have about 10 minutes or so before more information comes. But racing in the rain is one thing. Racing on the Macau gear circuit in the rain is quite another, because of the nature of the street circuit, the contours, the bumps, the narrowness, and in other parts, the speed as well. So a delayed start for at least 10 minutes.
I was saying, David, yesterday that for quite a while I thought, and this was before I ever came to Macau, I always thought, it's a bit unfair, really. I mean, it's such a hugely demanding and testing circuit at Macau, and it is always the final round of the World Championship. Previously, the World Touring Car Championship, World Touring Car Cup, World TCR. And before I came here, I always thought it was a bit unfair to decide a championship here at Macau. Then I came to Macau and I thought, hang on, no, this is right. They are the world's best drivers in tin-top cars, and to have the ultimate test around the streets of Macau is a great way to decide the championship, but it's demanding enough as it is. If you want to throw in these conditions as well, then it becomes just an incredible way to decide a world championship. We're about to see it happen here at Macau today.
But it's such a shame that the weather gods can throw this. I mean, yes, that there are wet races elsewhere. You're perhaps familiar with a safety car start. But around here, the nature of the track, it's a bit like the Nordschleife in some respects. Yes. You know, there are challenges here and dangers here that you don't get elsewhere. And there are slow parts of the Macau circuit, of course, but there are ultra-fast bits. And that really is the concern, those first 3 or 4 quick corners in these conditions. The teams will have been talking to the drivers. They'll be relaying information upstairs to race control. And although the grid has been cleared, pretty much, we will have more news in about 5 minutes. But I'm sorry to say, I think the rain intensity has increased a little bit over the last few minutes.
So the puddle just opposite our commentary box, down just in front of the start-finish line, has grown.
Yeah.
So it is now halfway across the track, isn't it?
Indeed so. Now, the grid is based on the results of Q2, into which the top 12 from Q1 went, and then you reverse the top 10. Still with me? So it's the reversal of the 10 fastest drivers of the weekend, and that means that it is Andy Yan on pole position, who has been a regular here in the last few years within TCR, touring car events, and he's the pole position driver, and Martin Cao looking for honours in the TCR China Championship, lining up alongside. Second row of the grid is where you get to the first of the World Tour drivers. You've heard from him on the grid, Ma Xinghua. But Andy Yan, the pole position driver, multiple Chinese touring car champion, TCR Asia champion. He won the Macau Touring Car Cup race, not the gear race, but the all-comers touring car race back in 2014. Martin Cao lining up with him at the front of the grid. The 2014 British Formula 3 champion, don't forget. It wasn't, I'm afraid to say, British Formula 3's strongest season, but Martin Cao was the winner. He's been the China Touring Car champion as well last year. Lots of single-seater experience before he came into touring cars, and he is the man second on the grid. Third on the grid is Ma Xinghua, from whom you heard a rather bedraggled Lisa talking to, and Ma Xinghua, China Touring Car champion back in 2020. And he's somebody else with a big pedigree in single-seaters. Formula Renault, A1 GP, Formula 3 in the UK and Spain, Super League, GP2, even Formula E for a time. And then fourth on the grid is where you find the first of the GOAT racing team Hondas. You're looking at Esteban Guerrieri's car, but fourth is his teammate, Dusan Borkovic, multiple Yugoslavian karting champion, Serbian hill climb champion, European hill climb champion, and European Touring Car Cup champion as well. And for 5 years, he also served in the National Assembly of Serbia. Fascinating fact, 37 of the morning. Then you get Nestor Girolami on the grid in one of the many Hyundais on the grid. And there is, of course, that sort of separate teams and manufacturers battle to look for. It went in favour yesterday, the teams championship of Cyan Racing, Lynk & Co. But the Hyundai Elantras are here in big numbers, and Nestor Girolami, twice the Argentine Super TC 2000 champion. And sixth on the grid is where you get to the championship leader, and indeed the reigning champion, Norbert Mikelic. And he would dearly like to leave Macau again with a world title in his pocket, but he would perhaps like it after a pure race rather than safety car laps, or whisper it, no laps at all. Suzuki Swift champion, Hungarian Clio champion, Seat champion, and TCR World Tour champion as well. That's the front 6 on the grid covered as we head towards 11 o'clock and more news. Now, it's not the easiest of timetables to juggle here. There are more races and the roads need to be open for the public, for the local traffic by 6 o'clock. And you don't just open a gate, you do have to disassemble bits of the circuit. So there's always a curfew, there's always a cut-off. And so really, if you can't run in your time slot, you don't run.
Lisa was having problems getting in to speak to drivers, not surprisingly. One of the things that they really do have to deal with in these kind of conditions in a tin-top car is not steaming up inside, because where they're sat, they can't just lean forward as you might with a road car and just use the back of your hand to clean the windscreen. You can't get to the front of the inside of the windscreen, or indeed the side view on the side windows. So that would have been quite an issue. And when you see them leaving the doors open, that's so they don't steam up inside with all of this humidity. You realise, of course, that not only is it wet, but it's also a humid part of the world. Humidity is running at about 94% this morning, and the track temperature is only a couple of degrees warmer than the ambient temperature. So all of that sort of gets together and creates more problems than just the surface water on the circuit and the rain coming down on the windscreen, but also steaming up inside as well.
Yeah, and it's that visibility that is part of the problem. Spray, the condensation, plus aquaplaning on the standing water, and I'm getting a bit fearful about this, given that the rain is intensifying all the time. Fair play to not just all the teams and the marshals for standing out there, but our camera crew, who thought they could go for shelter, and then with the start delay board, had to get back out onto the grid. There you're looking down at Jason Zhang. So the next bit of news is coming. The most bizarre thing about all of this, you look at these pictures, you think it's a grey, wet day, and you're absolutely right, it is. Every weather app we're looking at, every weather forecast we are being presented with is saying there's no rain today.
Yeah.
And it's the weirdest of things that it just seems to have not only come over the gear circuit, but stayed. It's not disappeared, there's no wind to blow the rain away. No. It's out of nowhere arrived, and it's just plonked itself above the circuit.
Thick cloud cover since I opened the curtains this morning, really, at 6:30 this morning, and it continues. It's relentless. We see Rob Hupscott down there on the grid, somebody that has won so many times here in a tin top around the streets of Macau. But I'm pretty sure in all the years that he's been competing here at Macau, he will have not experienced conditions quite the same as we have this morning.
No, I mean, wet photographs, wet pictures are unusual, to say the least, from here. And it's deteriorating, isn't it, the weather, I'm afraid to say. More information in 10 minutes. Wow. Start delayed and another 10-minute delay. So the touring cars yesterday had quite an interrupted affair with a track blockage on the first lap after an incident coming out of Lisboa, and the cars all getting tangled up, and that took a while to clear, and it then meant that we had to have the suspension of the race before they carried on, and we are looking at a further 10 minutes. But I'm afraid to say, as long as the rain is falling and the standing water thus increases, it starts to tip towards a thumbs down rather than a thumbs up. But all the drivers have had a race, or at least they started a race yesterday. They've had opportunity to race, and the lure of the gear circuit, I'm sure, will bring them back next year, because there is just nowhere quite like this, and it is the most unusual year. I don't think anybody has come with proper wet weather gear, because you just don't expect weather like this. You might have a sprinkling of rain every Preston Guild, but nothing like this. It really is pretty much unprecedented.
Yeah, what a challenge. What a challenge for the teams, for the spectators. And I have to say, the spectators, their enthusiasm has not been dampened by this deluge of water that we've had, not just today, but over the course of the 4 days of the Macau Grand Prix. People still in their kugels, in their ponchos, posing for selfies, big smiles on their face, because they know this is a highlight event of a year at Macau. They look forward to this all year round. The planning for next year starts tomorrow morning. It's a big organising committee for the Macau Grand Prix, such is the enormity of this event and how important it is for the region as well. And the spectators equally look forward to Grand Prix Day here at Macau. Whatever the weather, they want to be here in the grandstand, and they are.
Now, we've had one driver.
Do you want a selfie?
With whom?
With me.
Oh, later,
okay.
maybe.
It's a unique selfie as well.
Is it?
Yeah,
okay.
with the rain in the background.
Well, I'll put that on my to-do list.
Absolutely pouring down off the roof of the commentary building.
I think it's Marcin Khoa who's got out of the car and gone for a splash and dash, because he's been told he's got another 10 minutes sitting there. So clearly he's making the most of the time. It's horrible. There are more drivers scampering off the grid. It's such a shame, because this is out of everybody's control. It really is.
And that's a challenge in itself, because when a driver gets out of the car, instantly the problem is wet soles of the boots. And the team will be doing their very best to dry them off before they get in the car. But that's not easy either. Remember, they used to... I think I first saw it in Formula 3. They had little overshoes that they would put on over the boots and then pull them off before they got into the cockpit of the car. But I've just seen, as you say, a couple of drivers getting out of the car and running off for a comfort break with this further delay to the start of the race. And that in itself is important. The drivers have to hydrate hugely before they get in the car. These tin-top cars all closed up. This part of the world gets extremely hot inside, so they have to take plenty of fluid on board, and nature being nature, that fluid needs somewhere to go.
What you mean, what goes in? Yes.
Oh, yes.
Just like a quick look at Jamie Lai, the TCR China driver on the grid. There is the Korean driver, Wang Doyun, who picked up some damage early on in the weekend. He's another of the drivers from TCR Asia. Missed out yesterday on the opportunity of taking the championship, but former Lamborghini Super Trofeo racer and Asian Le Mans LMP3 category driver there on the grid. The grid that continues to be a wet one, sad to say. Now, you said to me it was going to brighten up about lunchtime.
That's about right.
And it's about 11:05 here. But
lunch isn't until midday. You can't have lunch before midday.
All right, but it's just so depressing with the puddles filling up in front of us. There, back onto the grid, is number 66, which is another of the local drivers, Richard Lee, who's been racing in TCR China. And number 11 is Gary Kwok, who was in trouble yesterday. You heard a little earlier maybe Marcin Khoa talking about not getting going. He bogged down on the grid, stalled on the grid, and Gary Kwok was the unsighted one that ploughed into the back of him and damaged his own car. So Gary Kwok didn't get going particularly, which was a real shame for the TCR Canada champion of 2019. TCR, the rule set to which we run, really is a global category. It's spread far and wide. And the World Tour has this sort of nucleus of regulars, as you'll be aware if you follow the championship, and then it links up with the local championship, the local drivers, and there's another of them, Hugh Heng, in number 95, in another of the Audis that we have on this grid. Hugh Heng, who has raced in the past in the gear race, in the Honda Cup in China, and the China Endurance Championship. So there are lots of experienced drivers on this grid, even if they are not regulars within the TCR World Tour. And the gear race, Alan, as well, something with a tremendous pedigree. For many years, it was a non-championship sort of catch-all touring car race, and then eventually the ability to have not only a common rule set, but an actual championship was enough to entice the second coming of the World Touring Car Championship here.
It's when you look down the former winners of this race around the streets of Macau, it's a who's who of tin-top greats over the years. May I start with 1989? Can I offer you Tim Harvey, who won around the street? Oh, you're grinning.
Well, I was going to offer you somebody even earlier than that, 1980. I was going to say Hans Stuck, because he was an absolute legend. Yep. But yes, you can offer me Tim Harvey. I don't know what happened to him.
Hans Stuck, who won a couple of times around the streets of Macau for the Macau gear race. Other drivers include Emanuele Pirro, Joe Winkelhock, Frank Bieler, Steve Soper. Shall we go on? I think we should. Jörg Müller, Augusto Farfus, who not only has won in GTs around the gear circuit here at Macau, but let's not forget he was a tin-top driver as well, and won one of the races in 2005. Andy Priaulx, how many world titles did he claim?
The race has been postponed. More information as soon as possible. Race postponed is the latest that we have on our timing screen. So race postponed, more information later. Where that takes us to, we shall await more. But for the moment, the race has been postponed. I think the feeling is there is little point keeping everybody on the grid getting wet, but where the race can slot in before the road opens, better brains than ours have to try and make this call in race control. Now, back to Alan's list of previous winners.
I've only got as far as 2005. That was Augusto Farfus. And I was about to say, how many titles has Andy Priaulx? He was known as an expert around the streets of Macau in a touring car, and he claimed multiple titles with this being the final round of the year. And it kind of played into Andy Priaulx's strengths, even if he came not necessarily leading the championship. He knew he could be confident around the streets of Macau and claim another world title. 4 world titles went the way of Andy Priaulx, and of course the final round of the World Touring Car Championship here at Macau. Alain Menu, Rob Huff, of course, who's on this grid. He has won so many gear races here at Macau. An absolute expert. Alain Menu, Ivan Muller. These are the names that are on the trophy for the gear race here at Macau, and I am pretty sure that not many of them will have experienced conditions quite like today.
Go back to a slightly earlier period. I touched on Hans Stuck. There are other names that the gear race would not be complete without. One being Roberto Ravaglia, who won pretty much everything in touring car racing in the 1980s. He was a European champion. He was the world champion in 1987. He, I think, was the German champion, the Italian champion. The one that got away was the British Championship. He did race. He, I think, only ever had 1 win in the BTCC, but he did race in it, as you recall, for BMW. 1 for BMW and the McLarens in FIA GT. But Roberto Ravaglia was a touring car great at the time, as also was the man that won it in 1984, the gear race in his XJS, Tom Walkinshaw, who was able to, through his team, engineer great cars and drive them very, very well indeed, the late Tom Walkinshaw. So the start postponed, and the teams will now go to the garages. And the feedback from the people on the grid, and I think we would agree looking out of the window, is that the amount of rain has intensified and it's sort of worse than it was. So if they were saying it was a bit touch and go before, there's now virtually no argument because the weather conditions have worsened. 1972 was when we had the first gear race that John McDonald won, and it was very much an invitation race. Cars would come from all over. In the early 1980s, the Group A regulation came along, and it was adopted in Europe in 1982. It spread around the world, and that allowed more and more cars to come over here and compete on a level playing field, really, because they were of the same regulation, the same specification. And that continued all the way through to the end of the 1980s when Group A fell apart, and as Super Touring, the 2-litre regulations picked up, then the race came for 2 litres, and it was then, after a few years of that sort of interim between Super Touring exploding and Super 2000 rather coming on stream, that it was rather dominated by Duncan Heisman and his brother Patrick for a few years, and then when Marcello Lotti kick-started the European Touring Car Championship and then the World, the streets of Macau welcomed touring car racing greats from all over the world with open arms, and of course through the troubles of the COVID era, it became a local race once again. There were 1 or 2, though, that were prepared to come out here and quarantine for 10 days, such as a Mr. R. Huff, amongst others, in order to still be part of the mystique of Macau.
Loves this place, loves this place, and I don't think it takes an awful lot of arm twisting to get Rob to come out to Macau. It is a gift of a circuit for a driver. Maybe not so much today for the touring car drivers, as they will now be feeling a sense of disappointment because they take their adrenaline, their pre-race preparation to such a point that whatever the conditions, they're ready to go. And now they are having their cars pushed back through the barriers into pit lane, and they will have to get themselves at some stage today back in that zone, getting ready to race at Macau.
So cars being pushed away, and such a disappointment for the teams because it's hard to see instantly where a slot may be in the timetable. So back to the paddock they go. The paddock also, we should just make the point, is an underground car park. It's at least the teams can be dry briefly. Now Lisa is back out in the rain and she's found Dusan Borkovic.
Dusan, not ideal conditions for the final race of the year. The race is postponed. They're clearing the grid at the moment. What are your thoughts on the situation? It's the best thing. It's the safest thing, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe the safest, yes, but for me no, because I was in P4 and yesterday I had some big issues with the engine of the car. Today I hope that we solved everything, and my hope was, of course, to be on the podium, and it could be really, really possible because I had a good pace when everything is okay. And for me, these conditions are okay. I managed that, so it's true that it was very difficult to drive, and even in 5th, 6th gear, the aquaplaning, there was a big wheel spin, so it is dangerous, quite honest, but sadly, we are not racing, and I like to race, and this was my chance for podium, so I wanted to give the podium to my fans, to Serbia, and to everybody who cheers for me.
Well, thanks for chatting to us, Dusan. Let's just see what happens. Okay, back to commentary.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, a disappointment there. We said the drivers are going to be disappointed. Dusan saying, I like the conditions. I've got a great starting position. It would be nice to get the race underway, and it's, I'm sure, going to be echoed by quite a few of the drivers. But, you know, these are tricky decisions that are being made in race control, and they are being made not by being swayed by drivers, maybe one or two drivers saying, no, don't want to race in this. It's a little bit too wet. There might be a couple of those, or at least teams that are saying we'd rather not race in these conditions. Most of them are at the point that they're ready to go racing. Whatever the conditions, they've known since first thing this morning, since they got up and pulled the curtains of the hotel room back, they knew what they were going to deal with, and they will be, by and large, disappointed.
The rain is one thing, but it's the standing water and the drainage, and that's true of any circuit. I mean, I can remember at the British Grand Prix this year, we had races delayed and races interrupted because of standing water, and this is a different ballgame altogether. Public roads that are used only in terms of motorsport for the Grand Prix, the 4-day period every year. So Marcin Kwar's car being pushed to the paddock. There's the big race control building, which will be an absolute hive of activity right now, because, of course, as the TCR organisation team say, no, it's not safe to go. Into the room will walk the FIA GT World Cup, Macau GT Cup organising crew, and say, right, well, how does this affect a GT3 car with all that more power? And then have the same deliberations to make. So.
Wider tyres as well. Water displacement can take place, can't it, with GT3 cars? But if the rain keeps coming down like this, it's going to be very, very tricky.
So apologies for the absence of racing here at Macau, and hopefully more positive news will come during the course of the day. So fingers crossed we will go racing in Macau.